Good evening, my name's Elliot Hicks, and welcome to the Big Hits 2019 edition of Scrap for Your City. This year, we've got 8 people defending 8 of some of the better sports cities that we've seen in this country. However, there will be no Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles, or Boston. Those are all cities that have a very great sports history, but they're also pretty simple when you think about it, so we're making it a little more challenging for each of this year's participants. Each participant will be asked 3 questions in the first round. If you are ruled by the 3 judges to have done the best in the first 2 questions, you'll get 2 points. If you win the 3rd question, you'll get 4 points. And if there's a tiebreaker, well, you'll just have to wait and see what happens. Stay tuned for the first round of Scrap for Your City.
Welcome to the new season of The Big Hit.
Hello and welcome to The Big Hit.
Welcome back to The Big Hit.
Welcome to the first round of Scrap for Your City here on The Big Hit. The judges for this round, my name is Will Barbera. Alongside me is Nick Tadowski and Dylan Vargas. Starting off, we have Jake Slobodnik with San Francisco, California, and we have Steven Langdon with Dallas, Texas. So first question, which team is currently the best in your city?
Well, Will, I'm glad you asked because, the Bay Area has a lot of good teams in their repertoire. 2 notably, especially this season, are the Golden State Warriors, as always, and the San Jose Sharks over in the NHL. The Golden State Warriors, if I had to pick one, I'd pick Golden State. They're currently 52-24 in the Eastern Conference, trailing the Milwaukee Bucks for the best record in the NBA currently. They're looking to make it 3 years in a row as NBA champions. They made it to the past 4 years in a row in the NBA Finals. Unfortunately, didn't pan out all those years, but Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Klay Thompson combined have over 76.6 average points per game. And by the way, they're coached under Steve Kerr, and if you have a dominant team, it's got to be led by someone who's dominant in the coaching staff. Steve Kerr, when he played, an 8 championship winner, and to come over to Golden State, it certainly has panned out for them. And they're stacked with talent. I mean, come on. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, DeMarcus Cousins, who was a steal from the Kings. The Golden State Warriors got DeMarcus Cousins for literally nothing. Kevin Durant, Andrew Bogut, you named it. So right now, the Golden State Warriors, in my opinion, are the best team right now in San Francisco.
For my team, I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys as the best team in Dallas right now. Went 10-6 last season, had a phenomenal season last year, and have made the playoffs 3 of the last 5 years, winning the division all those 3 years. And they have one of the best quarterback-running back tandems in the NFL, Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott has the most rushing yards since 2016. Last year had 1,434 rushing yards, led the league, in fact. And Ezekiel Elliott, one of the best players in the NFL right now. So Dallas, they have a lot of hopes for the next couple years, and with that strong offensive line and those great core young players, they have to be the best team in Dallas right now.
So we got all 3 for San Francisco there. So we'll move on to the next question. Jake wins the first round.
You heard it here first, and even though I do hate super teams, I had to give it to Jay because the Warriors are just so dominant right now. You can't help it. But let's move on to the second question, starting with Steve this time. What is the best sports moment your city has ever seen?
So my best sports moment, it will be taken back to December 28th, 1975. Just to paint a picture, the Dallas Cowboys are playing in the playoffs. Roger Staubach is their quarterback. Their final seconds of the game, tosses up a pass that is caught for the game-winning touchdown. But why is this moment so historic? Well, because of what happened during the play. As Roger Staubach is throwing the pass up, he says a Hail Mary to himself. And forevermore in the NFL, a last-second chance in an NFL game would be called a Hail Mary. This sports moment is not only historic for the NFL, but for sports in general. Roger Staubach saying his Hail Mary, helping the Dallas Cowboys advance in the playoffs, where they eventually would lose to the Steelers, but December 28th will forever be known as the Hail Mary game, and that is why, because of the historical factor that's involved with it, that is why it's the best sports moment in Dallas sports history.
Steven, you can eat your vitamins and say your prayers as much as you want, but that catch is not named in history with its own name. And my biggest moment actually topples your team a little bit with 2 words: the catch. January 10th, 1982, 49ers upsetting the Dallas Cowboys. 28-27, San Francisco and wildcard team. Cowboys took the division 12-4. Why is this game so significant? Opened up the legend of Joe Montana and the underdog 49ers, which took them to a Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl 16. In a heave of desperation, Dwight Clark found himself open in the back of the end zone. As he came down with the catch, he fumbled it and then regained it. In today's sports, it may not be considered a catch, but back then, it led them to a 28-27 victory over the Cowboys with mere seconds to go in the game. This led to their Super Bowl victory over the Bengals, leading to their first Super Bowl victory in history as well. And why it's so important, as I said before, rise of the 49ers dynasty and the legend of Joe Montana. Not only this, but it was the first time we've seen a major upset in the NFL playoffs.
Yeah, but in any sports game, in any Madden game that you have ever played, what do you see as one of the plays? Hail Mary. Hail Mary. That play solidifies why it's such a great moment.
And it's commonly used nowadays. That's why it's sort of wearing out its specialty. Whereas the catch, you can see it in Madden moments.
It's not
on ESPN
wearing out.
NFL 2K5 as one of the best moments, actually top of the list, called the catch.
All right, boys, that was a great argument there. Both catches were absolutely historic for the future of the NFL. But it seems all 3 of us have made our decisions. Hail Mary, full of grace, beats the catch 2-1. Dallas now has, it's 2 points apiece, boys. So the third round, it's going to be, I'm going to let Dylan tell us this one to you guys.
So we're on to the last question here. Who are your 4 greatest players in your city's history? Jake, we started off with you.
Well, in the Bay Area, 4 names easily come to mind, 2 current and 2 in the past. Arguably, I know I'm not a huge fan of him, but you got to give credit where credit is due. Barry Bonds for baseball, home run king, total home run king in a single season, 73 home runs, 2001. He clinched the home run king crown in 2007 against the Colorado Rockies. He's a 5-time NFL MVP, or NL MVP, 93, and the 4 years straight, 01 to 04. He's a 14-time NL All-Star, 8 Gold Gloves, 13 Silver Sluggers. Next up, arguably, Steph Curry. Actually, no argue needed. 2-time MVP, 6-time NBA All-Star. 5 straight years leading in 3-point field goals, 2012-2017. First all-time and active in free throw shooting in 90.7. First all-time and active in free throw shooting. Spent entire career in Golden State. You don't see many people doing that. And only at 31 years of age, his Hall of Fame probability is at 99.9%. Moving on, we're moving on to the NHL a little bit. Joe Thornton, best San Jose Shark to live, and he's still playing right now, currently age 39. He stands 9th all-time for NHL assists, 1,061. 1,474 career points, 14th all-time, 413 career goals, 140 power play goals in 1,563 games played. He was the 05-06 Hart Memorial Trophy recipient, which is the team MVP, Art Ross Trophy the same year, 05-06 first-team NHL All-Star. He was twice second-team NHL All-Star and an 09 President's Trophy winner with the San Jose Sharks. And finally, who else but Jerry Rice? Spent entire tenure in the Bay Area, 85-2000 with the 49ers and the Oakland Raiders, 13-time Pro Bowl, 10-time first-team All-Pro, 85 All-Rookie team, 7 statistical category that he currently still holds records in, and that's receptions, reception yards, reception touchdowns, total touchdowns, all-purpose yards, and yards from scrimmage. And then he's also the 12-time NFC Offensive Player of the Week, spanning from 85 to 95. He is an 88 Super Bowl MVP, and of course, the cherry on top, he's a first-ballot Hall of Famer, greatest athlete in San Francisco history, Jerry Rice.
All right, so first off, we're going to go to the ice, where my player is going to be Mike Modano. If you ask any person who is the best American-born hockey player ever, Mike Modano has to be at the top of the list. Most points, goals scored, assists, and games played by an American in NHL history. 2014 Hall of Famer, voted on as one of the top 100 greatest players of all time. had 1,374 goals in 1,499 games. Just incredible. Played all but one season for the Dallas Stars. He was drafted first overall by the North Stars, which eventually moved down to Dallas. Just a phenomenal player. Basketball, who else but German Jesus, Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk Nowitzki, future Hall of Famer, no doubt, first ballot Hall of Famer. He was an NBA champ in 2011, beat what many called the dream team of LeBron, D. Wade, and Chris Bosh. Also, 14-time All-Star, 9 times he was voted on as a first or second team All-NBA. Incredible stats, 6th all-time in scoring, and is one of only 3 players with at least 30,000 points, 10,000 rebounds, 3,000 assists, 1,000 steals, and 1,000 blocks. Incredible stats for him. Baseball, Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan had 7 no-hitters in his career, 3 more than any baseball player ever. Also had the most strikeouts in MLB history. Has 839 more strikeouts than the second best player in the big unit, Randy Johnson. Also, led the league in strikeouts 11 seasons. And, not to mention, was voted on to the Hall of Fame in 1998 and received a 98.8% of the vote, 3rd best all time.
Just a shame he can't run the Texas Rangers like he could pitch for him. I must say that right now. And Dirk Nowitzki can't hit a 3 to save his life. But excellent choices all around.
Dirk Nowitzki is one of the better players of all time, 6th in scoring. Nolan Ryan, best strikeout pitcher in MLB history. Finally,
yeah, I love watching him in the NBA three-point contest for the memes. That was fun. You were at my dorm to watch that.
he played 21 years in the league, all with the Dallas Mavericks. NBA record. NBA record, okay? So while you have stats, I have records to my players.
Oh, I do too.
Finally,
Steph Curry's an active record right now, and so is Joe Thornton.
Yeah, well, you have Jerry Rice. I have Emmitt Smith, best running back ever to play the game. 3 Super Bowls, 8-time Pro Bowl, 5 times in the first or second team All-Pro, 4 of which were first team All-Pro. And when you're playing with Barry Sanders and many other great running backs in your generation, that's phenomenal. Also, has 1,629 more rushing yards than the second best player in NFL history, and has 19 more touchdowns than the second best player in NFL history.
But how many statistical categories does your player lead in? How many does he top?
Who?
Emmitt Smith.
Emmitt Smith?
Who does he top? How many records does he hold?
Emmitt Smith
Jerry Smith holds 7 records.
Emmitt Smith has every rushing record ever made.
Quoting my favorite TV show, Letterkenny, why don't you take about 20% off there? But right now, I think Jerry Rice tops Emmitt Smith.
Emmitt Smith has the rushing record for carries, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns. Every rushing record ever.
Shall I repeat? Jerry Rice, receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, total touchdowns, all-purpose yards, and yards from scrimmage.
Yeah,
7.
Emmitt Smith did it all by himself.
The more, the merrier.
Jerry Rice had a quarterback throughout his entire career. What did Emmitt Smith have? Emmitt Smith was a running back. You need to be a running back in the league. You have to rely upon yourself and yourself only.
You also have to rely on your offensive line.
Great offense. He had a great offensive line, but that only helps.
You can't say that he did it for himself then.
Jerry
Rice couldn't do it himself. Jerry Rice can't throw to himself. He relied on Joe Montana to help him out.
Yeah, Joe Montana, one of the best quarterbacks ever made.
And you quoted Deion Sanders. He was also one of the best of all time. Don't get mad at me for whenever I say they actually use teamwork. Don't get mad at me for that.
My players are a lot better than yours. Who did you have for baseball?
Barry Bonds.
Nolan Ryan, best pitcher ever.
Barry Bonds, best hitter.
Barry Bonds had steroids. Helped steroids.
Looking at
steroids.
Congrats. Nolan Ryan probably juiced up too, but yet no one caught
Nolan
him.
Ryan did not juice up. Not proven.
Not
Barry
proven.
Bonds
Doesn't mean he didn't
up.
do it.
Juiced up. Juiced up.
So 2 of the 3 judges have made their decision. Oh, we got the 3rd one here. Everyone, present your results. 2-1, Dallas beats San Francisco. But it looks like, in a close fashion, while both people scrap for their cities, we can only have one winner, and it is Stephen Langdon representing Dallas-Fort Worth. Welcome
welcome back to the first round, the second matchup of Scrap for Your City here on the Big Hit. I'm switched out with Dylan Vargas for this round as a judge, but we still have Will Barbera and Nick Dudowski with us. For this matchup, we got Mike Costa with Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Hunter Mitchell with Denver, Colorado. Here, Will, go ahead and get this first question in.
First question, fellas. Which team is currently the best in your city?
So in current Denver, they're the best team for Denver right now has to be the Nuggets. They are 2 games back from the Warriors, who arguably have the best starting 5 in NBA history, definitely the best starting 5 in the current NBA, but they're only 2 points back in the West from them. They have one of the best big men in the league in Jokic, but they also have 7 players total on their team, averaging at least 10 points per game, which makes them one of the most balanced teams in the NBA. To go along with the star player, they have a legitimate shot to win the championship this year, as well as probably the next 5 or 6 years if they keep this team intact.
Okay, so most people know me as the guy that looks like a bum in an NHL beat-up jersey, but today I decided to get all nice and dressed up and sexy. Decided to wear red because it's going to be an absolute bloodbath, not because it looks like a tablecloth in an Italian restaurant. And I think it goes without saying, everybody knows it, I'm just the one saying it, that my team is synonymous with the Patriots and Tom Brady. It's Bradshaw with the Steelers. It's Kobe with the Lakers. For my team in Minnesota, it's the Minnesota Lynx and Maya Moore. The Lynx have won 4 championships in the last 20 years. That evens out to about, 5 championships, or 1 championship every 5 years, if my math is correct. I'm not great at math. You go with the Patriots, you've got about 6 championships in 50 years, which averages to 8 years, which means that the Lynx are a better team than the Patriots. It goes without saying that Maya Moore is one of the greatest athletes of all time, and it's Minnesota, it's the Minnesota Lynx. I don't know what to tell you. Right now, they just keep winning 11, 13, 15, 17 every other year. It's going to happen now. What is it, 2019 right now? They're going to win it this year. So I'm going with the Minnesota Lynx. Okay. Checking for PEDs.
All right, with that, Hunter will take the first round. 2 points for him, 0 for Mike Costa, but he can even it out with this next question. What's the best sports moment in your city's history?
I'm going to even out with this one right here. 2 words, everybody knows it, a little recency bias for everybody out there. Minneapolis Miracle. I'm going with the Minneapolis Miracle with Stephon Diggs. Case Keenum, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, one of the greatest for the University of Houston. Everybody knows his name. Drops back in the pocket, pocket's collapsing, chucks it up into the air. Stephon Diggs. New Orleans doesn't know what to do, runs to the end zone, chucks the helmet. Everybody knows it. It was on SportsCenter's top 10. It was all over Twitter, all over Instagram. It's the greatest moment of all time, in my opinion.
One thing that makes my moment better than you is the one goal in every sport in history is to win the championship. Minnesota didn't even make it to the championship game after having that catch. My moment is the Super Bowl 32 win, the Denver Broncos beating Brett Favre, the reigning 3-time MVP of the league. The Broncos coming in, upsetting that team behind Terrell Davis's MVP performance of 30 carries, 157 yards, and 3 touchdowns, which is the most rushing touchdowns in a Super Bowl, to finally get Elway his first of 2 Super Bowls in his second to last year.
Okay, no, it was me. It was a Minneapolis Miracle. It was just great. I mean, dude, it just gets me so pumped up every time, dude. You see that ball chucking up there. I wasn't alive for that, so I don't know if it actually happened. But the Minneapolis Miracle, I was alive when it happened, and I saw it, and it was amazing.
But yet again, Minnesota went into Philadelphia the very next game and got completely blown out by an Eagles team who went to the Super Bowl and beat the Patriots.
Okay,
if you didn't win a championship in that year, you can't consider that the best moment, because in 50 years, Minnesota still didn't win a championship in 2017. They
Okay.
still did not have that championship.
Okay, when you're right, you're right. I'll admit that. But you're wrong, because in that moment, at that time, it was the greatest moment in Minneapolis. Everybody went nuts. There were riots in the street. Everybody drinking, going to town. Everybody was getting loaded. It was just a great time. I don't know what to tell you.
That was quite a scrap there, but nothing is more impressive than the impossible. And when Case Keenum threw that ball to Stephon Diggs, nothing was more impossible than when Stephon Diggs took it to the crib, threw his helmet on the ground. That Super Bowl was fixed for Elway. Terrell Davis carried him the entire way. They just wanted to give Elway a couple ships on his way out of the door. So I think Will, Spags, and I agree that it's going to come down to the last question, which is going to start with you, Mike Costa. Who are four of the greatest players in your city's history? Go.
Yeah, it's quite simple. I didn't have to think about this too much. Number one, I know Jake over there was talking about Jerry Rice, but I think Randy Moss, the better receiver. I don't think people say that you got Jerried. I'm pretty sure that as a receiver, when you have an amazing catch, you tell him you got mossed. He's the Messiah. He's the freak. You can call him whatever you want. Him and Tom Brady, when they were together, they put up amazing numbers. It was ridiculous what they did. SportsCenter's top 10 all the time, 1 through 10. It was amazing what they did. I've got number 2, Kirby Puckett. Not a big baseball guy, but I dig deep for this one. Kirby Puckett, Hall of Famer, 6 Gold Gloves, 6 Silver Slugger, 10 All-Stars. And he was actually the only player on the roster when they won it in 87 and 91. It's kind of a big deal. So, number 3, we're going to go KG, Kevin Garnett. Dude was a force to be reckoned with. He was amazing. Everybody feared him. Made the playoffs every year when he was there, 96 to 2004. I wouldn't get in the way of Kevin Garnett. The dude was a freak. He was a one-man show. They got a couple guys, and they actually did something with Latrell and Sam Castle. That's when everything went nuts. They were living in Kobe's era, so couldn't do too much. Number 4, back to the Lynx, we've got Maya Moore. Maya Moore in the WNBA, Performer of the Year in 2017. They call her the greatest woman in history. 4-time NBA champ, 2014 MVP, 5-time All-Star, led the league different years in steals and assists and scoring, for the record. 2 gold medals. She was Forbes 30 for 30 brightest young star in 2013, which is kind of a big deal because she's got a lot to go because she's pretty young. So I got Maya Moore for my 4th.
All right, the number 4 best player in Denver sports history, Alex English. Small forward for the Nuggets in the 80s. One of the best small forwards of his era, put up 26 points per game and an 8-time All-Star in an NBA that was brutal, especially to people who drove into the paint. And for him to score 26 points per game in that NBA is unthinkable, especially for a player who most people don't know. He's not the Jordan. So for somebody like that to score that many points per game was outstanding. He also had a career .509 shooting percentage, which is also, to make over 50% of your shots in that sort of NBA is also unheard of. And he was second team All-NBA 3 times. My number 3 best player in Denver sports history is Nolan Arenado. Right now, he's only 27 years old, but he's still only gotten 4 All-Stars, 4 Silver Sluggers, and 6 Gold Gloves, which is almost unheard of for somebody he hasn't even hit his prime yet. He's also he's led the NL in home runs 3 times since 2015, and he's just one of the best third basemen, especially fielding third basemen, now in baseball and in baseball history. Next, the second best player in Denver sports history is Joe Sakic for the Colorado Avalanche. He led the Avalanche. One of the big reasons for this is because he led the Avalanche to the first championship in any sport in Denver history, and he had won the Conn Smythe that year, which is the MVP of the playoffs in hockey, with 34 points over a 22-game span. He was also a 12-time All-Star. He is 9th all-time in points out of anybody in NHL history. And he was the league MVP in 2001 season, which they also won the NHL championship. And now, the number 1 best player in Denver sports history has to be Elway. He is a 9-time Pro Bowler, 2-time Super Bowl champion. He was the MVP in the 1987 season. He was the Super Bowl MVP in 1998. And he played, which he was 38 when he played, and it was his last game in the NFL. And the first team NFL Hall of Fame all 90s, which means he was voted as the by the NFL Hall of Fame as the best quarterback in the 1990s, which was also at the end of his career.
Nope, I don't like it. I had the better list, for sure. 3 and 4, I don't even know them. Number 1, Case Keenum had a miracle. John Elway didn't have a miracle. I'll give you Joe Sakic because I'm a hockey guy. But none of those are known as winners like Maya Moore. Maya Moore trumps all of them. Maya Moore can take all 4 of them.
I think I don't know how you wouldn't know who Nolan Arenado is and Alex English, but looking at your list, Elway beats Moss because the biggest points that you had in your talking about Randy Moss were his times with the New England Patriots in the best system in sports history. He didn't do that with Minnesota, so that doesn't count as being one of the best things in Minnesota history.
All right, I'll take that back. Yeah, you are right there, but I'll take that back. Iconic picture from Minnesota, Randy Moss on the bench, 3 catches, over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. I don't think Elway did that. Let me check it.
Well,
No, he didn't do it.
Elway didn't catch the ball. He's a quarterback.
Exactly. That's why I'm right and you're wrong.
All right, and with that, the polls are in, and it is a unanimous vote for Denver, Colorado. So, in the second matchup of Scrap for Your City, round 1, it is Hunter Rocky Mountain Mitchell taking the win. But we got 2 more matchups to go, so don't go away. We'll be right back with more Scrap for Your City here on The Big Hit. Welcome back to The Big Hit. We have our third matchup here on the first round of Scrap for Your City. Facing off today, defending Detroit, Michigan, will be Michael the Tiger Surma going up against Chicago, Illinois with Joey the Beast Chrisman. Let's go ahead. Will, you want to get the first question as always?
All right, fellas, which team is currently the best in your respective city?
The team that is currently the best in Detroit right now, without a doubt, is the Detroit Pistons. 39-38, not saying much, but none of the other Detroit teams are over 500. And Detroit Pistons currently have the 6th playoff seed and could be heading back to the NBA playoffs for the first time since 2016. And going to battle for them is Blake Griffin, great power forward with a great trade by the Pistons from the Clippers. 24.7 points a game, 46.3 field goal percentage, 35.8 3-point shooting, I'd say that's pretty good, and 74.9% free throw shooting. And you gotta have those accurate free throws or you're screwed in the playoffs. And next, Reggie Jackson, not to be confused with that athletic back in those days. Point guard, 15.5 points, 42.5% field goal percentage, 36.8 3-point percentage, and 86.7 at the free throw line. And last but not least, the big drum, Andre Drummond, the center, 17.3 points, 52.9% field goal percentage, 15.5 rebounds a game, with 10.2 of those coming from the defensive side.
Well, like you said, Summer, all your teams are below 500. However, the Cubs are doing good right now, but they're not the best team currently because they're losing the division. However, the Bears, in my opinion, is the greatest team in Chicago right now. They came off a 12-4 record, which is 3rd best in the league. They had the 3rd best defense in the league with 21 sacks, 1st in the league, and they lead the league in interceptions with Kyle Fuller, 7 interceptions. They had Khalil Mack, who had 12.5 sacks on the year. They had the best rush defense. They had the best defense in the league. They had 424 points for and around 283 points against, which is the 3rd best in the league. Like I said, the Cubs, they're doing pretty good. All your teams pretty much suck. So the Bears, they're doing pretty good right now.
And with that, we have a unanimous decision for Chicago. So with that, 2 points for the Beast, none for Surma, but he can come back in with this next question. What's the best sports moment in your respective city's history?
I definitely got to go to Mr. Hockey here, Gordie Howe, his first Stanley Cup championship in the year of 1950 versus the New York Rangers. And the great production line of Gordie Howe, Ted Lindsay, and Sid Abel, which is the best line of the 50s by far. Harry Lumley records 3 shutouts and has a 1.85 goal against average in 14 games in the Stanley Cup playoffs that year. And in that Game 7, Pete Babando would score a game-winning goal in 2 overtimes to beat the New York Rangers 4-3 in a wildly original 6 matchup. This success would lead to the 52, 54, and 55 Stanley Cup championship teams. And even though they won cups in 36, 37, 43, Gordie Howe was the man on the ice, without a doubt. He's Mr. Hockey, and this would lead to the Red Wings' ultimate success down the road later, with Nicholas Lidstrom win 4 Stanley Cups in 97, 98, 2008, and 2002.
Well, like you said, I didn't know any of the players you just said, but the moment I have picked came from the 1998 season when Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson decided they were not going to be in the Bulls team next year. So, in that season, they decided to go to the finals against the Utah Jazz. And with a few moments in left of the game, Michael Jordan scored a quick shot. He stole the ball from Karl Malone and then dropped a game-winning shot with 5 seconds left. With that game and with that win, they repeated their second three-peat of the game. And then Michael, Scotty, and Phil retired. They didn't retire, but Jordan went to the Wizards.
All right, and with that, we have yet another unanimous decision for Chicago, giving the Beast, Joey Chrisman, 4 points, and Surma with none, but he can tie it up and have our first overtime tie after this if he gets this next question. You want to go ahead and get that, Dylan?
I got it. So our last question for the last 2 players here. Who are 4 of the greatest players in your city's history? Surma, we'll start with you.
The best line player of all time, Barry Sanders, without a doubt. 3,062 rushing attempts for 15,269 rushing yards. Second, Walter Payton. First, Emmett Smith. But Barry Sanders had an electric light that just wouldn't shut down, just wouldn't shut off. You couldn't click him off. And he had terrible quarterbacks playing with him, by the way. Bob the Goose, Gagliano, Rodney Peete, Mr. Lipazine, Andre Ware, Eric Kramer, Scott Mitchell, and a good guy coaching for the Colts right now who is backup for him, Frank Reich. And Barry Sanders would also lead the Detroit Lions to their first playoff win since 1957 NFL championship when they beat the Dallas Cowboys 38-6. Even though they haven't won a playoff game since then, Barry Sanders was the best Detroit Lion, the most ferocious Lion there ever was to be seen. Best Tiger in modern history is Miguel Cabrera, Triple Crown winner in 2012 with a batting average of .330, 44 home runs, and 139 RBIs. And he was the first one to do it in 45 years since Carl Yastrzemski for the Red Sox in 1967. And his career batting average is .316 with 465 home runs, 1,635 RBIs, and 2,676 hits. The best player for the Detroit Red Wings of all time, Mr. Hockey, Gordie Howe. Played 25 years for the Red Wings, a quarter of a century and played 30 total years of his career. And he played 1,767 games, had 801 goals, had 1,049 assists, and had 1,850 points. And he was the only player ever in NHL history to play in his 50s for the 1979 to 1980 good old Hartford Whalers, who are now known as the Carolina Hurricanes. And he also has those 4 Stanley Cups in the 50 to his resume. And during the playoffs, he had 158 points in 154 games in 25 seasons and led the scoring in playoffs 6 times. The best Detroit Piston of all time, bad boy Piston, Isaiah Thomas. 2 NBA Final Championships, 89 to 90, 12-time NBA All-Star, 45.2 field goal percentage with a 29% three-point shooting, 76% free throws, 9.3 assists, and 19.2 points. He helped the bad boy generation become successful by getting up in players' face and pressing them down. Bill Laimbeer would become the Pistons' all-time rebounder with 9,430 rebounds, averaging a 9.7 rebounds a game. Dennis Rodman, with defensive rebounding abilities, had 11.5 rebounds and 7.1 defensive rebounds per game as a Piston. Rick Mahorn, he may not have been a great player, but he got in people's faces, and that's where they were the bad boys of Detroit, winning the 2 finals in a row and showing them who's boss.
Joey, let's go to Chicago. Let's see what you have to say.
Will do. Well, the best player, or number 4, is Ryan Sandberg. He established himself as a perennial All-Star and a Golden Glove candidate, making 10 consecutive All-Star appearances and winning 9 consecutive Gold Glove from 1983 to 1991. His career, a .989 fielding percentage, was a major league record when he retired in 1997. Sandberg was elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in January 2005. He was formally inducted to the ceremonies on July 31st, 2005. He resigned from his duties for the Phillies on June 26, 2015. He also played 15 seasons with the Chicago Cubs, led the National League in runs 3 times, MVP in 1984, versatile with 344 stolen bases, 282 home runs, and 9-time Golden Glove, and also, like I said, Hall of Famer. Now, for hockey, you got Bobby Hull, which is a former Canadian ice hawker who is one of the greatest hockey skaters of all time. His blonde hair, legendary skating speed, and 2 rushes, and the ability to shoot the puck at very high velocity were all part of the player known as the Golden Jet. His talents were such that 1 or 2 opposing players were often assigned just to shadow him in his tribute to explosiveness. In his 23 years of National Hockey League, Hull played for the Chicago Blackhawks, which he won the Hart Memorial Trophy and Art Ross Trophy. He also helped the Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup in 1961. Now, as football, you mentioned Barry Sanders. Yes, he is very good, but you also mentioned Walter Payton, which is better than Barry Sanders. Statistically, Walter Payton has he won the NFL MVP in 1997. He has 16,726 rushing yards, which is second in the league behind Emmitt Smith, which is what Stealing was Dallas. 9 Pro Bowls. If he was healthy for 16 seasons, he carried the rock 317 times. That's incredible. Like I said, Hall of Famer. Now, we all know who I'm about to say right now for basketball. Perhaps the greatest athlete to ever play a sport, Michael Jordan. This guy was insane. He averaged over 30 points in his career. He brought the city of Chicago 6 championships. He retired before he won in 3, retired, then came back, won in 3 again. There's not much more I can say about that guy. He is incredible. That's all I really need to say, because Michael Jordan beats all of your other players combined. He is not just him, but his Clothing line, Jordan put Chicago on the map, up there with Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike. May I say more, Surma?
No. But
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't need to say more.
Barry Sanders was way more elusive than your Mr. Walter Payton. First of all, Barry Sanders only ran 10 years. 10 years. Your Walter Payton got old and he started slowing down when he started to retire, and Barry Sanders still had more juice in him when he was about to retire.
Bobby Lane curse? When was the last time Detroit Lions won a championship?
And may I mention the Kerplunk, the field goal against Philadelphia Eagles this past playoffs?
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Gentlemen, listen, I love everything. That was great, but we're going to have to go to a tiebreaker because it's a unanimous decision for Detroit on this one. That was fantastic. Way to fight your way back there, Surma. All right, gentlemen, for this tiebreaker, you have 1 minute each. We will start with Surma since he just came and tied it up. You have 1 minute. In that 1 minute, why, just period, is Detroit better than Chicago? Go.
Detroit is way better than Chicago. They are blue-collar, hard knocks. They are going to kill it this year with Detroit Tigers, Miguel Cabrera coming back off of injury and looking like his old self. Yes! Yes! Josh Harrison making excellent plays at the diamond, and Jordy Mercer going to make terrific shortstop throws.
You blew it!
And the Detroit Pistons, they are definitely going to mess the 76ers up in the playoffs this year. They are going to slow them down with their defense and their rebounding, and they are so going to blow them up in 2 games. At least 2 games of the series. Detroit Lions, Matthew Stafford, greatest thrower of throwing yards in NFL history as far as statistics go. He has more passing yards than anybody in history at this time period in his age. And Gordie Howe is the best hockey player of all time, hands down, no doubt.
I just want to talk about the fan bases of Chicago. Remember, the Cubs have not won a championship in 108 years until 2016. Through all those years, the fan base has stayed strong with the Cubs. And the Bears as well. They only won 1 championship, and that was in 1986. But even though they have packed the stadium with fans, the Blackhawks, the fan base of them is ranked 3rd in the NHL. The fan base of Chicago is bleeding with the Chicago sports blood. Detroit, you're just talking about the players. The fans are what makes everything happen. Without the fans, no money. No money, no sports. So, like I said, the fan bases are what make everything happen. That's what gives teams revenue. The buying the tickets, buying the clothing, the items, everything. The fan bases of Chicago is way more diehard than Detroit has ever been.
All right, give us 1 moment here just to think about our vote, and we'll get right to you. That was fantastic. A lot of passion, a lot of heat. Probably the hardest decision so far, but with a 2-1 vote, Chicago's going to move on to the next round. Surma, I think you sold it better, but in the end, I think there's just a few things when it comes down to players and that fan base that make Chicago hard not to pick. But we have 1 more matchup here in the first round of Scrap for Your City. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more on The Big Hit.
We are back. Daddy is back on the desk alongside Spags, who's been here for the last 2 matchups, as long as newcomer Kyle Calculator Scott. But now, just before we get started with this round, a quick recap. In the first matchup, we had Steve Langdon with Dallas beating San Francisco. We saw Denver beating Minneapolis. And we also, unfortunately, saw Surma be defeated by none other than Joey Crispin's Chicago. Now, without further ado, the moment you've all been waiting for, the main event, Let's get ready to rumble. We've got Jake, Hot Take Jake Taylor representing Miami, as well as the beard of broadcasting, Jeff Hart representing Washington, D.C. First question, gentlemen. Let's start with you, Jeff. Which team is currently best in our nation's capital?
DC is somewhere special, and the best team there right now, I got to go with the Capitals. How could I not? 2018 Stanley Cup champions. They have won 8 of the last division titles. And, dude, they have Alex Ovechkin, one of arguably the best NHL players currently right now. The Capitals have just been the model of consistency. If it wasn't for the Penguins, they'd have a couple more, and there's no doubt in my mind about that. The Capitals have proven religiously to be a playoff team, and they will be in competition every single year. So to me, it's no doubt I have to go with the Capitals.
The Capitals are just a laughingstock of Washington, D.C. and the entire sports. I'll get to that later, but I didn't really take this question in as like what is the best team right now, like currently, like as we're sitting here today. I kind of thought of it more as like as an era type of deal, like in our lifetime, like right now. I'd say the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat, they're fighting right now for a playoff spot. A little bit of a slump, but it's D Wade's last tour. He's making his rounds around the NBA. He's going out with a bang. He just hit that crazy buzzer beater a few weeks back. You know, he's still balling out. He walks the games with a cane, and he still balls out. And that's all I'm saying there. But I really thought Miami Heat, because in our lifetime, we've seen the Miami Heat be the most successful team in Miami for sure. And they went to 4 straight finals. They won 3 total. So in that regard, definitely Miami Heat. But as for the Washington Capitals, I really can't give them any credit because it was so long due. I mean, they went to the playoffs. They choke every single year. The first 2 seasons before the last 3, they won the President's Trophy twice. You can be as good in the regular season as you want, but you haven't made it past the second round. In the last 12 years, it doesn't really matter. So by the time they won it last year, it was like, boo-hoo, who cares? Everyone was rooting for Vegas. You know it's bad when a team's very first year in the entire sport is the favorite and the fan favorite to win, because no one likes your team because they're sick and tired of you choking. So that's how I feel about the Capitals.
Whew, you gave me a lot to work with. Okay, hold up. You call them chokers, right? You call them chokers. Yeah. What's the team they lose to, Jake? I want you to tell me the previous 2 years before their Stanley Cup championship. What was the team they lost to?
Pittsburgh Penguins.
And don't you think the Pittsburgh Penguins are a good team? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, but they didn't.
So how's that? Wait, how's that choking if they lost to a team that you think is better?
Because they won the President's Trophy. They won the trophy for being the
I hardly
best
call that
team
choking
in the regular season.
But didn't you just say regular season is different than playoffs, though?
It is.
You said it's a trophy for the regular season, but that's an entirely different animal than the postseason. And
yes.
I would hardly call losing to the Penguins choking, considering they were the Stanley Cup champions, did win. I would hardly call that choking. And for your Miami point, you're talking about D Wade last dance. Cool. Congrats. They're in. Oh, let me check the 8th seed in the East for the playoffs. They have a below 500 record, with the exception of Alonzo Mourning, D Wade, LeBron James, and Chris Bosh. Those years, the Miami Heat really haven't had much to go for. They have, they might not even make the playoffs in the East. That's sad. The Eastern Conference, which has religiously been weaker than the Western Conference, I don't care what you say. In the past decade, the Eastern Conference has been worse, and they can barely scoot in to an 8th seed.
Yeah, see, it's a complete different with the Washington Capitals. Washington Capitals, year after year, they have the best personnel, and they have the best chances. Everyone's gambling on them. They're the #1 seed going to the playoffs. What happens? They choke. I'm going to pull
against who?
Against who?
Against who?
They lost to the Montreal Canadiens. In winning, they were the best team. They scored 124 points in the regular season. That's the most anyone's scored since the Tampa Bay Lightning did this season. And they choked in the first round, blew a 3-1 game lead in the Alex Ovechkin era. And you said Alex Ovechkin's the best player on the team. First of all, Alex Ovechkin wouldn't be anything without Nicholas Backstrom. I'll just start right there. I got so many papers here, man. I don't know why.
Wait. I want to come at you real quick.
System here.
Wait.
I wasn't thinking too hard.
Wait. I want to use something against you right now. You're trying to tell me because the Capitals don't achieve their fullest potential that the Miami Heat, who currently right now have a losing record, are better. You're using your home right now. I'm seeing a lot of homerism from you because you're a Penguins fan. You're overlooking the fact that they lost to the Penguins, but yet say they choke. Your argument's invalidating itself right now.
They lost to the Penguins 11 times in their career. They played them 12 times in the Stanley Cup in playoffs, and they lost them 11 times. So it's not even like I'm a homer. They just lose to the Penguins because they just lose.
Because they're a good team. Because
that's how the playoff.
Because the Penguins are a good team. That's not choking.
All right, I'm being told to wrap it up.
Well, as much as I am a Miami Heat fan, and as much as I hate the Washington Capitals, I'm going to let Spags take this one.
All right, once Kyle, all right, he penciled it in. It's a unanimous vote on DC for that. Hashtag make Miami great again, because the president does live in DC. But let's keep it going. That's 2 points for Jeff. And maybe Taylor can get on the board here with this question. What's the best sports moment in your respective city's history? We'll start with Jake on this one.
One word, perfection. No one's have ever done it in the history of sports except the Miami Dolphins in 1972. Perfection. Perfect season. Perfection. You can't beat perfection. It's in the definition, so go ahead and try.
You know, valid argument, but I have to go with something here real quick. Imagine losing the 2 previous years to the same team, feeling the agonizing defeat, and just being so close to the championship that you could taste it. And then finally, you overcome the odds and the adversity, and you beat the Penguins in the 2018 Stanley Cup playoffs that brought you to face Las Vegas and got you your first Stanley Cup. The Capitals overcame the adversity and beat the team that had beat them the past 2 years. And, you know, to be quite honest, the whole city rallied around them. The Capitals had an entire city behind them. I mean, the perfect season is no doubt something great, and it's hard to do in sports, but the Capitals, to me, overcoming that adversity and the amount of pain and agony you had to go through to come through that and beat a team that had beaten you 2 years prior requires so much more effort and talent. I mean, it's just...
If the best moment in city's history took the entire time, the entire time the city has ever existed up to last year for it to be the best moment, that's just abysmal because you just experienced your entire lifetime as just absolutely nothing but disappointment. And that's all the Washington Capitals have ever brought. So the only reason that moment is remotely good in the history of the city of Washington, D.C. is because nothing else good happens. And then this took the entire franchise in the making. They have been good. They have been stacked. The owners have done whatever it takes. The city, the fans come year after year. They sit there. They see Alex Ovechkin, TJ Yoshi, Nick Backstrom, Braden Holtby. They see Brooks Orpik. They see all these players. They trade for Kevin Shattenkirk. They put all their chips in. They try their damn hardest to go and win, and they choke and they choke and they choke. They choked 23 times. They have been the favorite 23 times in the playoffs, and they have lost all 23 of those times. The only reason that moment is remotely memorable for the city of Washington, D.C. is because it was so rare. It was such a long time in the coming, and they gave it. And they just wanted to give it to Alex Ovechkin. The media hyped it up. Evgeny Kuznetsov had the best postseason scoring-wise since Evgeny Malkin in 2009, and they gave the Conn Smythe to Ovechkin because why? Because that's what the fans wanted. They wanted to see him win. It was boo-hoo. Who cares? Vegas sucked anyway. You know what? It took the whole franchise to do it. 23 years, 23 times the favorite and choking. It was just a long time coming.
So I'm going to completely ask the audience to take out the last bit of what you just said, because that's irrelevant to your sports moment. And in fact, if I can retort to everything you just said, you're talking about how my team has been disappointing and choked, you know, those 23 times. What has Miami done aside from that perfect season?
Well, they were perfect, so you don't.
Okay, no. I'm coming at you since you want to go back to history books.
They won the Super Bowl after that.
Since you want to go back to the history books, with the exception of Dan Marino. Other than that, how have the Miami Dolphins been the past 15 years?
Well, that's not the
How have the Miami Heat been for the past 7 years?
That doesn't relate to the question.
Well, but you seem to use it to undermine my question, so I fail to see it. You're using irrelevant information to try to undermine my question.
All right, the Miami Dolphins this season beat the New England Patriots. New England Patriots won the Super Bowl. Therefore, the Miami Dolphins should have won the Super Bowl.
All right. Well, gentlemen, that was a lot. But if we're going with just the one moment, you can't beat perfection. It's a unanimous decision with the 1972 Don Shula Miami Dolphins, not the Miami Marlins. But this, for the last question, it's all tied up. Whoever gets this will go on to the next round. To get that is audio engineer Kyle Scott.
Well, boys, this third question is going to be worth 4 points. So you have to name your city's best 4 players.
So I'm going to start off with football. Darryl Green for the Washington Redskins. Let me give you a little synopsis of what Darryl Green did. 3-time Pro Bowler. 3-time All-Pro. 7-time Pro Bowl. Member of the 90s decade team, which is quite an accomplishment when you think about it. Out of an entire decade, he got to be on a defensive position, a corner. There's only going to be 3 starting corners for that team that they can put down, and he was one of them for an entire decade. Super Bowl champion, Hall of Famer. Now, we're going to go in baseball. I'm going to go dig deeper into the books. I'm going to go Harmon the Killer Killebrew hit over 500 home runs, led the American League in home run 3 times, 4-time All-Star team appearances, Hall of Famer. Hockey, I got to go Ovechkin. I mean, it's obvious. He's a champion regardless of what Taylor may say about their choking. He is a Stanley Cup champion regardless of what you may say. Skills contest winner, NHL All-Rookie team, 7 first-team All-Stars, 3-time gold medalist, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer. There's no question on that. I don't care what anyone says, he will be. For basketball, Elvin Hayes of the Washington Wizards. The Wizards have a history of great players. You could technically put Michael Jordan in there. I mean, you could technically put Moses Malone, John Wall, Bradley Beal. There's a lot of guys in there, but Elvin Hayes, 21-point-per-game scorer. 21 points per game. 12-time All-Star, a championship, and a Hall of Famer. And you know what all 4 of those things have in common? All Hall of Famers, championships all around. And if you think about it, D.C., it's a city of winning. All the names I just named, they embody what our nation's capital is about, setting the example for everyone else. Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, is the Mecca. We need to set the example, and it's like that in sports too. I think we know Washington, D.C. knows how to set winning, Hall of Fame, and excellence in every category. And I think that's why D.C. is the best sports city.
It's weird because Miami has more championships than D.C. as a whole, so that argument just gets tossed right out the window. Second of all, my players, I have 3 Hall of Famers total, so all future Hall of Fame. You know D. Wade, 13-time NBA All-Star, 3-time NBA champion, 8-time All-NBA, 3-time All-Defense, All-Rookie, All-Star Game MVP, Finals MVP, scoring champion 2008, 2009, and he's top 5 in points and assists of all time. No, I don't fact check me on that. I can't read my handwriting, so edit that out right there. But that's D. Wade. You know, D. Wade won 3 championships. The city of Washington, D.C. has a total of 4. So you know what? If he does squeak his way into the playoffs this year, he has a chance to tie the entire city of Washington, D.C.'s championship between all their teams. Second of all, let's go down to Giancarlo Stanton. He's the best player for the Miami Marlins of all time. You know, he didn't stay, his stay wasn't very long, but he made a big enough impact. He won MVP, 4-time All-Star, 2-time Silver Slugger. He was so good that the Yankees decided to pay him all the money in the world to take him on So he, at the time, you know, he was the highest paid player. You know, everyone that was getting the show was trying to play him to hit those dingers out of the park. So I guarantee you wanted to play with Giancarlo Stanton sometime, and when you were playing MLB The Show. Pavel Bure, the best player for the Florida Panthers. Florida Panthers, you know, believe it or not, they are based out of Miami, so that is the team there. You know, Tampa Bay gets almost all the recognition for hockey in Florida, but the Florida Panthers in Miami. Pavel Bure, Hall of Famer, 3-time All-Star, 2-time Rocket Richard winner. He kind of put Florida hockey back on the map because he came from Vancouver. However, his best 2 seasons of his entire career were for the Florida Panthers. He won the Rocket Richard both years with them, took them to the playoffs once, put the Florida Panthers back on the map, and last but not least, Dan Marino. What else do you need to say about Dan Marino? You know, Hall of Fame quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. You know what? His luck's not too good when it comes to the postseason. He's not. They didn't really build too much of a team around him, quite frankly. But you'd be lying to tell me if he wasn't the greatest quarterback to not win a Super Bowl. I know he's not a winner like you say. You love your winners in Washington, D.C., although there are more winners in Miami. But still, I'll give you that. Dan Marino, still talent-wise, stat-wise, the best player in Miami Dolphin history.
So let me come at a couple of your points. You say D. Wade is, if he got another championship, which he won't, would tie Washington for the amount of championships the city has as a whole. How many championships did he have without D. Wade? So your whole city is riding the coattails of D. Wade's success. You're basing your city on one player. That team's success is based on that one player rather than the city. My city did it over a period of time in culmination because of what was put together rather than just one player. And who was your second player again, Jay? I want to recant that. Who was your second player?
That's my second player was Giancarlo Stanton.
Giancarlo Stanton and the Miami Marlins, who have had grievances over the past 10 years about playing Moneyball and not putting the proper resources back into the team. I would hardly call that, you know, a sports team I would want to represent my city. What was your last one again? Yeah, I just want to.
My last one was Dan Marino. Before that was Pavel Bure.
And you talk about winning. Dan Marino, the guy to never win a Super Bowl. Dan Marino, who you said is probably the best quarterback to not win a Super Bowl. Yeah, I'd argue there are some other ones. Warren Moon, I would definitely put up there. Kelly for the Bills. There are quarterbacks who are up there with his level of caliber of talent. Dan Marino, by far, is one of the best quarterbacks of all time to watch. But if we're talking about a culture of winning and excellence, Miami does not have that. You have a team that is playing Moneyball the past 10 years. You have a team that's riding the excellence of a player or a couple of superstar players and hasn't done anything outside of those, accruing those talents. They haven't done anything to do anything to help their team. They've just ridden the talent of a couple of players.
For Miami Heat, you were comparing without D. Wade. Well, Miami Heat have only had 31 seasons. They made the playoff 20 of those 31, compared to the Washington Wizards, who have been in the league for 58 years, only made the playoffs 29 times and won championship. As a matter of fact, the Washington Wizards have a losing record in total, and the Miami Heat have a winning record, so I really don't see how winning compares there.
How did Miami get those championships?
They won.
They won by what?
By scoring more points than the other team every single game.
No, by accruing up 3 superstar talents rather than building a team the
Well, why
right
didn't the
way.
Wizards do it?
Because the Wizards couldn't get talent to go.
Because
if you watch the NBA, if you watch the NBA religiously, it's about building your brand.
So the Wizards don't know how to win.
No, they don't know how to accrue talent and ride their talent.
Okay, so the Washington Redskins have 3 Super Bowls. Miami has 2. However, they were perfect one of them, and Washington and Miami played each other in the Super Bowl twice. Well, 1-1. So right there, that's a scratch as it is. Pavel Bure, Hall of Fame. Alex Ovechkin, not quite yet. Easy one there. And I don't even know who you said for baseball. So you're gonna have to.
Baseball, Killebrew.
Oh, Killebrew. All right.
Played for the Washington Senators.
The Washington Nationals never won a World Series ever. Miami Marlins have 2.
But the Senators, if you go back and do your history, were quite a successful team.
Yeah. Well,
and the Marlins have been accused of playing Moneyball the past 10 years, which I want to emphasize again how screwed up that is. A team does not put money back into their franchise.
I want to know how screwed up you can play 51 seasons, not win one single championship for your franchise, and then ship away the best player in the league to go to the Philadelphia.
All right. The rest of the judges make their decision as we ponder. What a great scrap we just witnessed. This one's. I wish we could get overtime on this one, but unfortunately, the first 2 rounds split. And it looks like it's a unanimous decision for the city of Miami. Miami wins 3-0. That is going to be all. Next week, we will conclude. No, we will not conclude. We are going to go to the semifinals of Scrap for Your City. Congratulations to all the great competitors that came out on the show today, and we will see you next week. Thank you guys very much for watching.